Welcome to The Way Home with Laura Smith, the show that brings you wonderful guests, helpful advice, and uplifting stories. The Way Home. Live inspired. Here's your host, Laura Smith.
Well, I couldn't resist when this book was presented to me, The 3 O'Clock Calls by Tom Smith. Firstly, because that's my beloved dad's name, and anything that's written by someone with that, I know it's going to be compelling, rich, deep, and poignant. And yet it is. Absolutely, indeed. Tom Smith is joining us today with this wonderful book of faith and courage, and just a memoir that has so much depth to it, and I think can really help people who have gone through tragedy in life and still found a way to carry on legacies and also live with a life of passion, vision, and hope. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
This, like I said, a memoir, a lot of the books I get are novels, but the memoirs I really love because in my mind, everybody has a beautiful story to tell, but you seem to have packed quite a few lifetimes into one lifetime yourself and have so much to teach. You're very involved with your spirituality, with your church at the First Baptist Church in Florida, as a deacon, and also all the work that you do throughout your community to help people. Tell us a little bit about your life, and then we'll get into the 3 O'Clock Calls and this beautiful book.
Well, thank you so much. And sure. So I live in North Florida, as you said, and we've been married to my lovely, beautiful, godly wife, Nora, of 40 years. We had 2 beautiful children, Danielle, that's mentioned in the book, and my other daughter, Kayla, who was 8 years after her. People say, hey, why'd y'all eat so late? Was it a mistake? She was not a mistake. We just got busy in life. So, and thank the Lord, we had a second child, because the reader will find out in the book, what happened to our first child, Danielle. And then so we got a little Shih Tzu dog named Boss Bandit, and we started out writing children's book, the Boss Bandit series, and he's always in an adventure. He goes to more places than we do. And so after, we got into the Boss Bandit books, and then the Lord laid this book here that we're going to talk about, Laura, on my heart. And it's been a long time in the making as the reader discover going through the events that's happened in our lives, the tragedies that we've had to go through and overcome. Like most people in this life, it's just things that happen.
Things that happen, but it reminds me of that book that was written when bad things happen to good people. And I think
my gosh, yes.
That is the category that you fall into. The 3 O'Clock Calls is the name of the book. And I'm getting a call at 3 o'clock in the morning is probably where that title came from, is that no one wants to get a call at that time in the morning because it doesn't usually portend something normally something easy to deal with. So tell us why the 3 O'Clock Calls and what that means to all of your stories.
Sure. So as we struggled a little bit with the title, I originally had titled this book Our Last Conversations, and that was where it was at. And then I will tell you that the Lord bestowed it upon me that said, that's kind of obvious what that is, Tom. He says, I'm thinking the 3 O'Clock Calls, because the Lord is not surprised when somebody, is in his presence, as you know. And the 3 O'Clock Calls is when I took all 3 calls. I took those calls at 3 a.m. and as you said, nothing good comes from a 3 o'clock call. I put that in the book, and you're hoping it's just somebody with a wrong number, like we've always wake up aggravated, like how can somebody have the wrong number at this time in the morning? But unfortunately, they was asking, is this Tom Smith? And I said, it is. Is your father George Smith? He is. That is my father, and we had to, hear what he had gotten into, and I took that call with my daughter Danielle, and then lastly we took a call from my sister at 3 a.m. from my nephew Blake, which we share what happened to him as well. And that was our last tragedy we just experienced, and we got through in August of 2024, Laura. So it's kind of relatively still fresh, and then we was able to put the book out in December of 2024. So we just now getting some closure on some of these things.
And really, closure is probably loosely said, because it's hard. Do you ever does closure ever really come when you have tragedy, especially with a child, with your child or your sister's child? But in the case of your father, George, that was a different type of tragedy. Explain a little bit of that and what it has been the journey through dealing with that.
Sure. So my father, he was a very difficult man, and my father was addicted to alcohol, and I share with the reader in the book that he took his first drink at 12 years of age when him and his father back in the day was making moonshine, and my father would help make that, and when he took his first taste of it, who would have thought that here's to becoming an alcoholic and I'm going to be addicted the rest of my life? But that's absolutely what happened to him, and he was a violent alcoholic. He wasn't a happy-go person. He got mean, and my father had many DUIs in the state of Florida to the point where they said your driver's license is revoked forever. And so he would be driving without a license. And I thought that's what the 3 a.m. call was with my father. I said, oh my gosh, George has done gotten arrested again because he's driving without a license. But Laura, as you know in the book, that's not the case. I got a call saying that your father has just murdered a man. And no son wants to hear that your parent just murdered somebody, and it was hard to understand and digest at 3 a.m. It took a minute to process what I was being told. Mm-hmm.
And so, your father obviously went to heaven. Excuse me. He went to prison. Yeah. Probably the opposite of that, but he went to prison, and how? Forever for good, and with any chance for parole, or just?
So he did get out, Laura, and as the reader will discover, he does get out. The victim had no parents, no family, no siblings, no nothing. They was both extremely, extremely over the legal limit, intoxicated, and they'd gotten into a skirmish a little bit. And my father shot the victim with a 12 gauge, point blank. And the victim gave a dying confession to the authorities, and my father was locked up, and the prisons are overcrowded, and so he was released. But here's the thing that I want to share. As a kid, I never gave up. I said, Lord, please, I hope my father finds salvation. Please help my father stop drinking, Lord. Please help my father start beating up my mother. Please, get a hold of him and change his life. And the perseverance that I had as a young man took me right on up to my, my adulthood. And I'm able to share that in his last days in hospice, we share in that book, that moment, that closure, when we was able to have a discussion with my father before he got put in the twilight and left this earth, that I was able to surround him and share with him the salvation of Christ, with what I believe with my faith, Laura, and he received Christ right there 3 days before he passed. And so it was, I know some people probably cut it closer, but my dad had lived his life and he felt like he wasn't worthy enough. And I had to convince him. I said, Dad, the Lord will meet you right where you're at. He'll take you right where you are. You don't need to clean your life up. It's too late for that. You can never be good enough. And so we was able to do that. And that was a moment.
Oh, my goodness. That is so poignant, and just how you find it in your heart as a son, with how that affected your entire life, with having a father that way. And yet you lived your life in a complete opposite way, but having to carry that with you always. Do you feel that? How did you get through that? Like, how do you get through living with a parent like that and then trying to yourself create a beautiful life?
That is a very good question, and I'll tell you, you don't do it under your own power. My mother was a godly woman and is a godly woman. She's 80 years old, and she made sure my sister and I went to church. My dad never went, and I got to I was old enough when he would start beating on my mother. I was able to say, "You're not hitting my mother no more." And my mother loved him. And back in the days in the 70s, the law enforcement couldn't do anything for domestic violence. They had to see it, even though my mother was battered pretty good. Now they got domestic violence laws in place where that person being a victim can be protected. But in those days, they didn't have that. I couldn't understand, Lord, why is this happening? And why does my mother stay with them? And my sister and I would go hide in the closet when my mother was getting beat up when we was kids. We were scared to death, and no kid should have to go through that. And I know when somebody reads this book, they're going to be sitting there thinking, oh, I had to do the same thing, because, addictions in our life in this broken world, it's real, and people struggle. And I just had to lean into my faith, and I said, Lord, I'm not giving up on my dad. He's sick. I love my father, but when he's drinking, he's a different person. And one of the things, Lord, I struggled with in this book is I said, Lord, am I making my father look like a monster? Because the 20% of the time when he wasn't drinking, he was a good man, but 80% of the time he was intoxicated and just mean.
Yeah, it's just, God bless you, and how you were finally able to get closure, but not after so much suffering with that, and then to have something happen to your beloved daughter. I always wonder, and you probably have great advice for this, being in the spiritual realm of a lot of your life and being a believer. How do you ever reconcile things like that when somebody like your father lasted forever, was able to do all these heinous things, and here's your beautiful beloved daughter who was set to be the next world golf champion, and then tragically gets taken away? How do you not drop your faith completely? I mean, it's easy to have faith when things are going well. It's also easy to have faith when some things are sad or hard because you cling to that. But I think it must be very hard to have faith when you deal with tragedy of that level. Oh,
and you're spot on, Laura. Even though you're a Christian doesn't mean that you don't grieve tremendously, and the suffering is real. And, as a believer, I believe in Jesus Christ, and I believe that the fundamental truth is that the Holy Spirit dwells within every believer. And so I leaned into the Spirit. I said, I need your help. I can't do this on my own. And so the spiritual battle took place. And I will tell you that any parent, I can feel like I can say this, that when you lose a child, Lord, the first thing happens is that you go to bed and you wake up and you think, oh my gosh, I'm glad to be woke up from that nightmare. That was a terrible nightmare. And for 3 seconds you feel relieved, only to recognize that, wait a minute, that is not a nightmare. That's my life. So you wake from a nightmare into a nightmare. And I put that in the book. And I don't know how people that don't have hope and faith in something, and for me it's Christ, how they make it through there and through those situations and those tragedies, because I know it took every ounce, because Satan's wanting to say, where's your God at now? Tom, I thought he loved you. I mean, look at the life that your father lived, and now your daughter at 19 years of age, where's your loving God, and why did this happen, and why? And I thought, you know what, Satan, I'm not going to let you allow me to go and get under a rock and have a pity party the rest of my life. I recognize that I'm in a spiritual battle. I will never know the word why. That leans, as a faith believer, and you read the Bible, and I think about Proverbs 3, lean not on your own understanding, but trust the Lord in all things. And I don't know if I'll ever have the answer on this side of heaven, Laura, why I'm on this earth in this broken world in which we live. So I said, Satan, I'm not going to keep questioning God why. I'm not going to go there. I won't have the answer, and I'll have a miserable life. But I can tell you this, I was proud to father that child for 19 years, and now she's with her real father. And that's the glory and the joy I have as a Christian.
Oh, and you are not saying it for this at all, but what a brave man you are. What an incredible asset to humanity you are, to not only get through this in the way that you have with that grace and humility, but then to offer it as maybe a way showing moment for others who are going through something similar. Tom, you have really taken your own tragedy and turned it into hopefully help and blessings for other people who might going through something similar. I think that you could do nothing more important with what you've gone through in life. And can I ask you from this standpoint, do you ever get to a point when you're grieving the loss of your child like that? Do you ever get to a point where you can enjoy life, when you can have joyful times with your family members? Do you ever you probably never get over it, but do you ever get through it?
You do. And I will tell you, and anybody that suffered loss, and I think that's mostly every human has suffered some type of loss. Hopefully not many have suffered the loss of a child, because that's just a different loss. When we go out to the cemetery and I look down there at that grave marker, it's a difficult thing to look at, to see your child's name on a grave marker. It's just not normal, and it takes you back, and it rips that Band-Aid off again, and you expose that raw wound, and it's still very much a sad thing. And but I'll tell you that, the most difficult time that we had, Laura, was holidays. And most people tell you holidays are rough and tough, and a lot of people want to give up then. And this book is saying, don't give up. People love you. They care about you. And my wife and I, strong support. Some people will, part ways with grief. We grew stronger. My wife would go into the bedroom and cry. She'd come out. I'd go into the bedroom and cry and come out. We'd stand around that Christmas tree with our younger daughter, Kayla, because we didn't want to bum out the holidays for her. So we had to fake it till we make it. We just said, Lord, we need you. We need this strength. I want her to celebrate Christmas. I want her to celebrate Easter. I want her to celebrate all the holidays that we recognize in this country. And I said, we're going to need your strength to do it. And over time, Laura, as we started transition from grief, where everything is just gloom and doom and you're sad, to understanding that, man, we have a joyful life. We got more life to live. I write that in the book. We're living for our daughter. We're living for our families and our faith-based community. They really come and loved on us and put their hands around us and helped us through that crisis, and on every one of them. And Laura, people will say, you don't need church for a religion. Well, you don't. You can have a relationship with Christ right where you're at. But let me tell you what the church community did, Laura. They came to us. They loved on us. They brought us food. We go to church with them all during the week. Our immediate family does that too, and your immediate family would as well. But your church family just has a way of, as you worship with them every week, you see them, and they just love on you every week. And I had somebody cut my grass and take my trash out for a year, and I kept thinking, who's doing this? It was a church member. And it's just things like that. The little things add up to be big things.
Yes, of course they do. But that is a really beautiful explanation that you just gave, and I thank you for that. And I also, I always think that, because my own father, Tom Smith, your name that you have as well, I always think, he wouldn't want us to be just sad every day of our lives or grieving and not wanting to enjoy. That would be the last thing you wanted. So right. Does that ever come into play also? You think of Danielle and how that she would want her family to go on in her honor. And, That's right. And yeah, so I got to
tell you this. So we're a golfing family, and my daughter, Danielle, got a golf scholarship to play at a university, and we started them out early, and I started Kayla out, who I told you was 8 years younger than Danielle, and we started her in the first tee. When Danielle had her tragic accident, we had to take a step back from golf. And about a year went by, my daughter finally says, Daddy, are we ever going to start playing golf again? And I said, well, Kayla, do you want to? She goes, yep. And so as hard as it was, and I shared this in the book, we go out there and we pick it up again. And then Kayla gets 10 offers from different universities. And we travel these 10 official visits and do all this. And then the last university she saves, the University of West Florida in Pensacola, Florida, about 6 hours from Jacksonville. She says, Dad, this is where I want to go. I want to finish what my sister started. And that's the way she honored her sister, Laura, is that she did do that. She became the number 1 collegiate golfer on that team. And she represented her sister well. And I was so proud to see that. And she's since then graduated, and we've got our first granddaughter. And you guessed it, she gave her daughter her sister's name. And so it's Elaine Danielle. So Danielle was her sister's name. And again, she's honored her sister.
That's absolutely beautiful. These are the types of beautiful nuggets of wisdom and love and godly living that you can hear and see in the book. The 3 o'clock calls is the name of the book. The 3 o'clock calls. It's by Tom Smith, a beautiful person with a beautiful name. And I think that so many people are going to derive so much comfort, wisdom, guidance, all the wonderful things that you're doing just out of your heart by telling your story so honestly. I know there's even a third story in there about your nephew. We'll leave that for our listeners to pick up the book, The 3 o'clock Call, so they can get all 3 stories from the perspectives, but your incredible, beautiful heart and wisdom behind all of this, Tom Smith. Thank you so much for joining us on the way home. I pray that people pick up the book and derive as much joy from it as I've gotten even from this. And when I say joy, I mean just the joy in the spirit. Thank you for that. And also your children's books again. Tell us the name of those.
Oh my gosh, Boss Bandit. So the Boss Bandit series, they're on Amazon just like the 3 o'clock calls is, and it's the Boss Bandit series. It's about a Shih Tzu that gets in all kind of adventures. They're 5 to 8 years of age picture book stories, and the kids love them.
Wonderful. The Boss Bandit series, named after his dog. And of course, this book, The 3 O'Clock Calls. Tom Smith, God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Laura, for having me.
You're listening to The Way Home with Laura Smith. Once again, here's Laura.
Well, after COVID, when coming from New York City and seeing what happened with the real estate, commercial real estate in the city and businesses who had once graced the floors like the one that I worked at on the top of Penn Station, entire floors dedicated to businesses and such. And the whole model changed because, well, people were working from home, and the recovery has been a little unique. So moving out here near Chicago, I think they have also dealt with some of the same circumstances. Here to help with some really interesting ideas, some solutions, so to speak, Eliot Abel. He is the Senior Vice President, Corporate Clean Energy Solutions for Pivot Energy. Eliot, thank you so much for joining us today on The Way Home.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Laura. Glad to be here.
I love the name of the company, and I think it really suits the situation that a lot of these businesses and commercial real estate owners are dealing with. But I love where you're going with this. So tell us all about Pivot, and then also what's happened since COVID. I mean, we're 5 years away from that, but there are still businesses feeling I would imagine the effects of having many companies, working in totally different circumstances now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So about Pivot, Pivot Energy is an experienced turnkey commercial renewable energy developer and owner operator. And we've been a leader in developing solar projects since our founding in 2009. And you mentioned the challenge, right? I mean, vacancy rates in commercial real estate in Chicago have hit an all-time high. Office vacancy rates are around 26.5%. And really what Pivot Energy is offering is giving property owners an easy solution to generate long-term, low-risk revenue, increase the value of their properties by leasing that unused space, think rooftops, parking lots, to develop much-needed solar and battery energy storage projects to meet the electricity needs of our cities, which is increasing every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think of rooftops and businesses, and I think of the after-dinner cocktails that often grace some of the tops of the buildings. But you're saying it's really actually added space that can largely benefit the electrical needs of that said building. So what does it take to make these types of conversions, and are they going for it? Is this looking viable?
Yeah, it's absolutely happening in increasing numbers. And the nice thing about how we approach it at Pivot Energy is it's really a simple turnkey solution for the property owners. So, we handle the development, the engineering, the construction, the ongoing operations and maintenance of the project. And really just bring a new revenue generating asset, a new tenant that's paying rent to these property owners that they didn't have already. So more rent today, increased value in the future. It really is a win-win solution for these property owners that have been struggling since the pandemic.
Sure. And what kind of money are we looking at in terms of, gaining from possibly putting Pivot Energy to work in someone's building?
Yeah, it really depends where it's located, the size of the building and all that. But these are compelling lease rates that really, they're long-term. We're typically talking about leases that are 20 to 40 years, paying rent every year. And it meaningfully improves the cash flow, today and the value of the property longer term as well.
Mm-hmm. And I was just wondering, I mean, are they building new buildings within Chicago? Or is that even something that's, being done right now? Or are people just really trying to salvage what they have and or buy or leased to others? What's going on just with the overall market?
Yeah, well, the nice thing is that this solution is happening on both existing buildings and new construction as well, right? Those that are building new are increasingly planning for the ability to put solar on their roof. So they're really thinking about how to, maximize that open space on the roof to create a larger solar project in the future. So we're seeing both right now.
Okay, so I'm assuming this is probably lifting spirits somewhat and getting people thinking more about the future. I'm sure it was tough for a while. As I mentioned, I know it was in New York and here in Illinois. Also near Chicago. I think that's probably something that's going to become viable. Do you expect it to be something that just keeps growing and becomes almost normal with a lot of these commercials buildings?
We do. Illinois has a really compelling community solar program that encourages projects to be sited on urban commercial real estate. It's a program that's been around for years and continues to grow. So, yeah, we think this opportunity is not going away anytime soon. But at the same time, the best time to have taken advantage of it was yesterday, and the second best time is today.
I love that. All right. Eliot Abel, Senior Vice President, Corporate Clean Energy Solutions for Pivot Energy. Where can we get all that information and then even dig deeper?
Yeah, best place to go is our website. Lots of great information there. It's www.pivotenergy.net. And there's also a way for commercial real estate owners to reach out, give us some information about their properties, where they're located, and we're happy to take a look and confirm that they're a good fit for solar.
Fantastic. Pivotenergy.net. Eliot Abel, thank you so much for joining us today. All the best with this.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you all, and thank you all for listening to The Way Home this week and to my wonderful guests. And may you all have a wonderful week that is safe, that's happy, healthy, and full of lots of miracles as well. I'm Laura Smith. See you next time from The Way Home.
Podcasts by Federated Media.